This is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm back with you on America's Mayor live from Palm Beach. And we're here after a very interesting day. The tragedy of a helicopter crash and the excitement of a live, full-scale cabinet meeting, which I don't think Americans often get to see, or many presidents are confident enough to let you see. The transparency of it is beyond anything any other president's ever done, for which this president should get great credit, but of course he won't. But that doesn't matter. I mean, the people, I think, are just soaking it up. They just see the difference here. He's constantly communicating with them. You sure don't have any problem figuring out what Donald J. Trump is thinking, right? At least I don't. It's not just because I know him. So, are we ready for our good friend Rob? Just a minute, yeah. Well, today, and I'm sure you all know this by now, a helicopter crashed in the Hudson River, and it happened about 3:17. They took off from the downtown heliport in Manhattan at 2:59. They flew up from there to the George Washington Bridge, a rather common sightseeing excursion. And then they came back down the Hudson River, where they got about where on the New York side, where there's the entrance to the Holland Tunnel, which is the southernmost tunnel to New Jersey. And on the other side, the entrance, to the New Jersey side, and you can see the New Jersey big, large air vent for the terminal, right where the plane comes down, the helicopter comes down. Out of nowhere, this helicopter is spinning out of control, and very hard, goes right into the water. And unless a miracle had occurred, you had to say to yourself, with the way that it hit the water, you're not going to have many survivors on that. And you had none. 6 people died, 5 passengers, 3 children. Are they able to see that clearly? There you go. A couple of times. I mean, that is extraordinary. That's the what you just saw is what I mentioned, the building right in that little right corner. That's the massive air duct for the tunnel. That's approximately where the plane went, right there. Well, okay, I think we've got the point. The New York City Police Department, the New York City Fire Department, their Marine unit, which is, I would say, they can't be much better, got out there right away. But from what I could see, had I been there, and Mayor Adams was, I would have been very, very not very hopeful. But of course, I would know that my guys would give him every chance they could possibly have. I don't know enough to tell you anything about how it happened, what could have been done, what kind of. It was a Bell 206 helicopter. I don't know it. I don't know a Bell 206 helicopter, so I can't tell you much about it or its safety record. I will tell you, I would not go on, nor would I let a friend of mine or relative go on a helicopter with one pilot. Even when I ran for office, I wouldn't do it. Now, I have occasionally gone on a private plane with one pilot, because you got a fighting chance of taking it down. You have no chance with a helicopter. Helicopter is a much more complicated aeronautical machine. And when it gets out of control, it doesn't glide. Airplanes can glide. Remember Sullivan in the Hudson River? Of course, that was extraordinary, but make it a smaller plane, the size of that helicopter, you might have been able to put that down right in the river if it was a plane. We don't know what happened to it. It didn't explode. It was not on fire as far as we could tell. Could we take one more look at it, Ted? It didn't look like it blew up or anything. It looked like the engine went out. Look up the see how many engines in it. Looks like engines went out, rotors went off, and the helicopter went out of control.
The Bell 206 has two options. One is a single engine or one's a twin engine. So we'll have to have more information to know which one of the Bell 206
Well, now, if
models
you
it
have
is.
a single engine with one pilot, you're taking a risk with death. You're taking a risk with death. With an airplane, you should never be on a single engine. But with an airplane, if you are on a single engine, I can give you a fighting chance. On a helicopter, you got no chance. God rest their souls. Spanish group here to enjoy the United States of America. What a way to do that, huh?
That's right, Mayor. And we are now awaiting our.
We have any other?
Waiting our New Jersey correspondent, Rob Kaufman.
Do we have any other? While we're waiting for him, do we have any other? I see we have a photo of mid-air separation of the rotor.
Right.
Do we have any more to show people so we can?
Yep, we can show people. I just got to
maybe make a few observations.
Sure. Just got to pull these up. It just takes a second.
I'm going to make a calculation with a single engine. It looked rather small too.
There's some more video here too.
Of course.
Yep, you saw in the video.
Did it come back up?
Yep, it's upside down in the water. So if we can bring Rob on, Rob will give us more. We're awaiting Rob here. So we're just seconds away here. We have Rob Kaufman. Rob, who lives near the crash site.
But this is Hoboken on one side, and the Holland Tunnel in Manhattan on the other side.
And we have Rob
the
on
meatpacking district, if I might.
That's right.
Give it a
And there he is. There's Rob. Very tiny Rob.
You look good.
You look good. You look very tiny. It's like you shrunk.
I must have the camera on the wrong setting. Is it okay though?
Okay. Tell us what happened, Rob, and from your point of view.
Yes. Well, I was here at the time. I received a text from Ted. That's how I found out about it. And I'm at the salon here in Secaucus, and I jumped in the car and I flew over there because there's a lot of shortcuts to get through Hoboken, which I took because it's in the middle of rush hour traffic, so I stayed away from the main. I got over there, and it started raining, and it was cold, and it was nasty, but I got in, and I saw the remains of the helicopter, which apparently was upside down in the river, and there were rescue vehicles there, and in some of the photo, I sent some video, I don't know if you have it. You can see in one video they're sending in a big barge there with a crane. They're going to pick it up out of the water and drop it into a barge. But then I'll tell you, I was reviewing the video that you guys put up on the previous show. And wow. I mean, what happened as far as I can see is the rotor came off that machine. When it was flying, the rotor came off because you can see the fuselage hits the water and then the rotor comes spinning down afterwards and hits it. Now, if that rotor would have stayed attached to the helicopter, those people probably would have lived. But once that thing goes, the thing goes down like a rock, because even when they have engine failure, they can still glide those things down to some degree.
Was the rotor disconnected at that point?
Absolutely, it was disconnected before I believe that may have been the cause of the crash, is that the rotor blade became unfixed from the aircraft. Because why else would the fuselage have hit like it did, and then literally 10 seconds later, you see the main rotor spinning like this, and it, boom, hits the water. And then you actually see various other parts of the helicopter hitting the water after. So the fuselage was one of the first things to hit. And then
Hit
all
very
the
hard.
other, yeah.
It hit very hard.
Oh,
Now-
yes, it did.
Stephen here, have you ever heard of a term called mast bumping when it comes to helicopters?
Is that's refers to when they're gliding it in with engine failure?
Well, it's when it's a dangerous condition where the rotor hub contacts the main rotor mast due to excessive flapping, and a lot of helicopter experts are speculating that that might have been the cause of this crash this evening.
Maybe that was what set that rotor off, what knocked it off the plane. Yeah, because then what's going to happen is it whatever hits, it probably knocked a piece of that blade off. Now you have something rotating that's out of balance. It will start wobbling like crazy and maybe bust off the shaft. Maybe that's what happened.
There may be some people in New Jersey who want a haircut.
Well, they can come here if they want here. HudsonHair.com. HudsonHair.com. But also, I was listening to some reports about it, and Hoboken mayor was, and the other officials were complaining. Apparently, there has been a tourism attraction of flying around Manhattan, and it's becoming excessive now, they're saying. And I know you had commented it on a previous show, Mayor. And I tell you, what the hell are these people just to to make money? They're risking people. Aeronautics is not something you play around with. You know what I mean?
What are they doing? I was always very, very skeptical and very critical of that commercial helicopter. I almost wanted them banned. I kept them out of the city. They had to always go over the water. I limited the amount of times they could do it. I required two pilots, and I really wanted to ban them if I could. But tell me exactly what the problem was. What the Hoboken mayor was upset about.
Well, he's complaining that this is not the first time that they've had close calls or some reason to be concerned about what seems to be excessive tourism helicopter flights. So in other words, this is not local officials like police commissioners and stuff having to get from point A to point B, which is really what that kind of service should be restricted for. But instead, you have third-party companies that are in business to make money. I don't know how much they make to take a Spanish family of 5 up into a helicopter and fly around Manhattan. I mean, what do they get for that? What is it, a $2,000?
Yeah, I mean, I'm opposed to it, and there are a lot of people in favor of it in the tourist industry, and a lot of cities do it. So it's not unusual. I do find it completely extraordinary that they go up with one pilot.
You mentioned that you quelled it when you were the mayor in New York City, and
I flew helicopters a lot, police helicopters.
Yeah,
I used them, for example, if that had happened and it was a rush hour and I had to get over to the New Jersey side, I might very well have taken a police helicopter over to the New Jersey side, so I could so that Bernie or Howard and I could get there right away.
That's what they.
The funny thing is, my second police commissioner was one of the bravest men I know. A Marine, decorated Marine, drug enforcement agent, head of the Marshal Service, invented the witness protection program, ran the fire department, and was police commissioner who reduced crime massively. He was afraid of helicopters. I used to have to force him to go on the helicopters with me. He would tell me they're inherently dangerous.
Yes, they're an unstable vehicle. It
was easier with Braden and Bernie. Bernie would probably hang on outside the helicopter, just so he could see better.
Right. But you're relying on that machine. You're relying on that engine. Unlike a plane, I know you had mentioned in the other show, you can at least glide a plane in, but with a helicopter, you're going down.
But you remember the police helicopters had 2 pilots, They had a navigator, sometimes a fourth guy. They were highly
Brain.
sophisticated machines.
Yeah, and
All
the
these
operator.
guys did is take care of them all day. I mean, they
Yeah.
were about as well taken care of as a helicopter could be, because it was like instead of their police dog, it was their helicopter.
Yeah.
And then I used them a lot on September. The way I was able to get to many funerals. As you know, the funerals were not all in New York. They were in where you are in New Jersey. They were up in Westchester. They were way out on Long Island. They were further down in New Jersey. And I would have to set up very, very carefully scripted logistics so that I could get to as many as possible. So I would use the helicopters for that.
Well, you're dealing with the premier professionals, in a New York City police department is not playing games. Their equipment is top notch. Their operators are well trained and top notch. Probably all military personnel, ex-military.
They are almost all military, and I tell you, they do some amazing things like follow criminals with the helicopter, pick them out.
So you got these
warn police officers of impending trouble. They're great. They're great guys, and then the divers that we have, FDNY and FDNY, unbelievable. Their performance in Flight 800 was heroic, but I'm sorry for these people. I mean, they didn't deserve this.
No.
And I don't know if you can remember back to 1977, we had atop the Pan Am building.
Oh, well, that stopped the Pan Am building from being a heliport.
Exactly. And you know what the cause was in that one? A rotor broke loose.
A rotor broke loose and it fell down.
Yeah.
It came out, yeah.
I remember the picture of it now.
Oh my gosh, I do.
It was up there and it went like this off the top. Poof.
And we can thank God in that tragic accident, some civilians who weren't passengers and who were just on the street actually tragically died. Here we don't have that case.
Yeah.
Luckily it was.
And Donald Trump, if I have the facts correctly, you may
down
remember
in Atlantic City
when he was running the casinos and the hotels.
Right.
He had to take a ride to Kansas City, Atlantic City, and at the last minute he didn't go, and the helicopter went up and it went down.
Yeah.
And he would have been on that, but for somebody needed him for something, and he was kind of annoyed that he couldn't go.
I think there were some attorneys or some prominent people on that aircraft that lost their lives too.
Yes, yeah, it was a terrible blow. I mean, he was a friend of mine then, and that was it sort of reminds you of much later where he escaped death in Butler County, right?
Yeah. It's just another one of those almost biblical moments or something with Donald Trump. God has been watching over him in so many ways, if you think about it, and thank God for Donald Trump. Can I just say that? Oh my God. How about this administration? Look at and you talk about believing your lying eyes. These Democrats are on TV. Somehow they construe what this administration is doing is somehow bad for the country. Are they kidding me? Did they take a look at the last 4 years of what they did to this country? This guy's got top people in place between Elon Musk and various others, Kash Patel. The list goes on and on. Great people who are working hard day in and day out. You could see things are getting better already. And Mayor, you were right once again, as you always are, with regard to the tariffs. I mean, you even did a show on it. And we had Johnny T on. Johnny T was right. He predicted this tariff thing is the greatest thing. And now most analists, as our friend on Fox News likes to say. I always thought that was funny.
Which one?
All right. So Levin, he instead of analysts, he calls them analysts. But they're on there, propagating stories about how the tariffs are going to ruin the country and it's going to be at the They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They take everything that Donald Trump does, like Donald Trump says, if he cured cancer, they find a way to say that there was something wrong with what he did there too. It's just amazing, isn't it?
It's China.
Yeah.
Just China. It costs you 125% more to buy shit from China.
Right. And how about that art of the deal? You know, that's typical Trump. He goes out, he's going to tariff the hell out of everybody, and everybody's all up in arms. But then, in the long and short of it is, when it's all said and done, he relaxes the tariffs on everybody else, puts everybody at ease. The markets come back, and who he gets is who he really wanted to get in the first place: China. China is the problem.
So we're going to have to find out a little more about it this weekend when we go skunking around Mar-a-Lago. We're going to go spying around Mar-a-Lago in the golf course. I want to figure out how planned was this and how much was him calling an audible at the line of scrimmage. You know?
Yeah.
It could be either.
Well, thank you, Rob.
All right, Rob. Hey.
You're welcome. I love you guys. I hope I see you soon. I want to get on a plane and come down from Mar-a-Lago this weekend. But
cold. You look cold. We need you here. We want to warm you up.
Oh my God, it's freezing. It's freezing here. You have no idea. Yep.
Vanessa will make soup for you.
Thanks, Rob.
I'll take it.
Well, can we show the hostages praising Trump? I really have to show this again. I showed it on my earlier show, but this is the kind of president we have now. Also, please explain to me, Ted, Steve, my good friend, Miranda Devine, says that Stephen Jensen, here we go. Let's watch that first.
I'm here, and I'm alive. President Trump, you saved my life. You saved the life of 33 hostages. Because of your efforts, and you're setting the hostage crisis at the high priority of what you're doing among all of the enormous issues and things that you're dealing with since you came into your position as President of the United States. You set the hostage crisis at the highest priority. You got 33 of us home alive. We all owe our lives to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And please continue your tremendous efforts, your tremendous actions, your tremendous accomplishments. Continue, and we will get, with your help, all of the remaining 59 hostages still in Gaza back home.
That's more time than Biden gave to them in his entire presidency. What a miserable creep. Well, I was telling you that the FBI, my good friend Kash Patel, according to Miranda Devine, also my good friend, says that Stephen Jensen was appointed to head the Washington field office. Now, the Washington field office, I have concluded in my long efforts of representing Donald Trump and others, is a completely corrupted office, along with headquarters, not the rest of the FBI. But Washington, I'm sure you've got some honest people there, but you can't take that chance. It really was so heavily corrupted and made into a form that it would not be exaggerating to say it was a Gestapo, particularly when they would show up with Gestapo gear on, which the FBI never wore, or use leg irons, which the FBI never did, or leak and have it photographed on CNN as a primetime news show, which the FBI not only wouldn't do, but is illegal. So Stephen Jensen, who was one of the architects of all of that, has now been made the head of the Washington field office. Well, according to Miranda, who is 100% accurate on everything, from 2020 until October of 2021, Jensen oversaw the FBI's controversial operations. You remember this, targeting parents at school board. meetings and Catholics going to traditional Latin masses. That could be me.
Yeah, I have friends on that list.
I wonder if he targeted me. I mean, they spent $20 million on me.
See, my only hope here is that maybe the Washington field office is going to have a drastically reduced role, perhaps, or maybe they're going to just, totally reform the entire thing.
Well,
but no, it doesn't make sense.
FBI
just on its face.
whistleblowers, who of course can't all come out, are deeply disturbed, and they feel completely betrayed. Stephen Jensen weaponized the FBI to persecute Americans over January 6th, says Steve Friend, who blew the whistle to Congress about dangerous and unnecessary SWAT raids on cooperative misdemeanor suspects and the manipulation of statistics to make the so-called domestic terrorism threat from that day look more widespread than it actually is. Friend was reassigned and not paid for a long period of time and not allowed to take another job, so he would starve to death. He says Jensen's promotion to head of the Washington field office is analogous to placing Anthony Fauci in charge of Health and Human Services. George Hill, a former FBI supervisory intelligence agent, says Jensen was the most ardent and supercharged person when it came to rounding up J6 defendants and a true believer in Joe Biden's domestic terrorism narrative.
Did these?
That the riot was the worst attack on democracy since Pearl Harbor, and that every Trump supporter in and around the Capitol that day was an insurrectionist, a white supremacist, and probably violent. He testified to the House Subcommittee on Weaponization about a conference call in which he allegedly heard Jensen berating agents in Philadelphia who were pushing back on demands to round up J6 suspects. The Philadelphia office said, well, there's no evidence of any kind, violent leanings or insurrectional leanings, to which Steve Jensen said, I don't give a F-U-C-K. They're goddamn terrorists, and we're going to round them up anyway. Jensen has refused to comment. Tom Fitton, who I just saw the other day at an event I did for Who You Can Rely On. According to another FBI whistleblower, he was known for opening numerous cases without predication. That means like the one they opened on me with no facts, which after 2 years, they found no facts and said there was no probable cause to go forward with the grand jury. So there was never any probable cause to go forward with the investigation.
How do these people squeak through? What is happening with that? Why?
I'm just telling you the facts.
What is the rationale? What
Hill,
could be?
Who was co-supervisor of the Boston Marathon bombing task force and so understands the threat of terrorism better than most, said that the investigation into the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, the largest operation in FBI history, was, quote, a rainmaker for 100 FBI personnel, not only to make their careers, but to make a great deal of bonus money. And there are major fights now raging between Patel loyalists and various FBI whistleblowers. A spokesman for Patel has been briefing reporters to trust that he's making the right decision. Let time put the puzzle pieces together. What we're doing will make sense. I see and hear you. I hope so. Tom Fitton, who is a great hero in exposing more of this than just about anyone, says that the guy was a key figure in the domestic terror push against January 6th. He treated them all as terrorists and was one of the key instigators in pushing the narrative within the Bureau that these folks needed to be jailed for long periods of time and ferreted out. And this is what Miranda expects of the FBI, and I wholly agree with her. We expected investigation into the FBI scandals such as the cover-up of Biden family corruption, the covert influence operation to persuade social media companies to censor the post Hunter Biden laptop stories, covert influence operation, the Russiagate hoax that dogged President Trump for his whole first term, the raid on Mar-a-Lago, the raid and covert surveillance of Trump's then lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, the arrest and shackling of Trump advisor, Peter Navarro, the targeting of parents at school boards, the targeting of Catholics who attend traditional Latin masses, and the targeting of pro-lifers. We hoped Patel and Bongino would focus on this. Instead, they appointed a fox to guard the chicken coop. It's early days, so everyone who admires Patel, which I do, wants to give him the benefit of the doubt, but there's no time to waste.
Wow. Right there.
With all the blood that we gave, we're entitled to an explanation of that one. One of the guys that was trying to destroy us has now been promoted. Maybe he was a double agent, but you better tell us that.
Well, I never guessed.
Trump did order an investigation today
Down Gordon's here.
of the guy who pronounced that the 2020 election was perfect. Christopher Krebs and Miles Taylor. It had to be completely nonsensical. Well, we have with us the guy who you can count on is going to give you the best insight into the inscrutable, horrible, and government of Red China, and that's Gordon Chang, author, spokesman, television personality, foreign policy expert. Gosh, Gordon, I want to know about China. I talked to you. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
So, Gordon, it seems to me that whether it was done deliberately or it was just a combination of events that Trump took advantage of, he put China in an extraordinarily difficult position where everybody else wants to go to 0-0, and China will be at 128.
China's in a very difficult position right now because it has an extraordinarily dependent economy on exports. And that's because Xi Jinping has turned his back on consumption as the fundamental basis of the economy. So his only way out is to export more. Now, Trump, with his 145% tariff on China, has shut most Chinese goods out of the U.S. market, which is the world's largest. Xi Jinping has got to scramble, try to sell his stuff around the world, and those other countries are not going to take these excess imports because largely they don't want their manufacturing sectors to be decimated by goods. So this is a very important situation. President Trump is going to stitch up trade deals with Japan, South Korea, the European Union, and that they're going to tie those places to the United States, and China's going to be left out in the cold.
And how did this happen to China? Is this an example of one of the things that people say about China? Very bright, very intelligent, but very rigid.
Yes, they got themselves into this predicament thing too far. So, for instance, they've been engaged in predatory trade practices for decades, and also they've been involved in criminal acts, which is the stealing of intellectual property. Now, there have been a series of presidents before Trump to do this, And so they just continued to do it. And so they've got themselves now in this predicament where all of a sudden, all at once, there's no transition period for the Chinese exporters. All of a sudden, their biggest and most important market. This is also true about pushing things too far. This is also true about what they did with their debt and all sorts of other things with their economy. And now all of a sudden, they are hit with one crisis after another. And I don't think they can get themselves out of it.
So what happens? What's the end result of this? They can't exist with those tariffs. It's going to be devastating, particularly if the rest of the nations or most of them are in a favored nations situation.
Yeah. I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a failure of the Chinese economy. China understands that a balance between the US and China, and who holds the leverage is, first of all, we're the bigger economy. The Chinese economy is less than 2/3 the size of ours. But more important, China is the trade surplus economy. Last year, China's merchandise trade surplus against us was $295.4 billion. Trade surplus countries got everything to lose in trade wars. Trade deficit countries like us have everything to gain. The only thing that's going to try to convince Wall Street, Main Street, and C-suites and to put pressure on Trump to preemptively surrender to China. I don't think Trump is in any mood to surrender to the Chinese, which means that Xi Jinping basically has no solutions.
I think we've got a little bit of a breakdown, Ted, in the transmission.
We're okay.
Say it again, Gordon.
Yeah. Okay. When you look at, tell me where I should start, but
basically that Trump is
beginning,
not
and
in the
then you
mood.
can
Trump is not in the mood to cave into China.
Yeah, I mean, this is entire strategy is to take President Trump and get him on his knees. And I don't think that's going to happen because President Trump believes in tariffs. We know that because he's talked to us for decades. During the campaign, he mentioned this many times. So the American people knew what President Trump was going to do, and President Trump believes this. So when the Chinese have this strategy of trying to mobilize public opinion in our country against the president, I don't think it's going to work. And that means China has no strategy. It has no place to, as I mentioned, other world are going to take the goods that Xi Jinping, and so Chinese factories are going to go out of business.
Well, what will be the end result? At some point, they're going to have to land somewhere.
Well, you'd think so. The rational thing for Xi Jinping to do would be to pick up the call President Trump and end up with a fair trade deal for both sides, which is what everybody wants. Xi Jinping has configured the Chinese political system so that only the most belligerent answers are considered, which means he can't be seen to basically beg the United States for a trade deal, which means there's not going to be a trade deal for a very long time. And China needs that trade deal because time is not on China's side.
Well, it's going to be very, very interesting. It's really remarkable how this all fell together so quickly. And in some ways, I think even a little bit of it was fortuitous, and Trump just took advantage of it. I mean, I didn't expect that all those countries would come in so quickly. I thought it would take a little longer. But those countries coming in so quickly put tremendous pressure on China. Wow.
Yes. Well, the world's biggest can't be replaced in the short or intermediate. South Korea, Japan, all the rest of them, they need to come to terms with the United States. And I think that they will, largely because they understand that they need access to the American consumer. The
Right,
Chinese know this
right.
too, but the Chinese are not in a position to actually come to a deal. Got to remember, Mr. Mayor, that in President Trump signed the phase one trade deal with China and violated it. So you can see that the Chinese political system right now just can't deal fairly with the United States, or I think for that matter, almost any other country as well.
Well, I think this is a good step, and let's see what happens. I'll be in touch with you, Gordon, and thank you so much for your coming on and for your always excellent analysis. It helps greatly. Thank you.
Well, thank
You know,
Stay
Gordon
safe.
is exceptional, isn't he? You see him on Fox and you see him on Newsmax and elsewhere, and always, 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 he makes sense. Very few people always, always, always make sense. Really, really remarkable. I think the end game here is really going to be very, very difficult for China. I don't know what it's going to be. And of course, that's going to be something we're going to be covering for quite some time, because that's our number one priority, China, and being able to put it in a spot that it doesn't threaten our world leadership. A different world. They lead the world. We're slaves. So we'll be right back. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month.
Wow.
Including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
There's Rudy Giuliani back with you on the Rudy Giuliani Show. This has also been a week of a number of legal cases, and they're in different categories, and they have different effects, and they're going to turn out differently in the long run. the AP case in which the president tossed AP out of special access because they refused to acknowledge that the Gulf of Mexico is now the Gulf of America because they're not Americans, was challenged in court in Associated Press versus Bodowich. And it was looked upon by the court as viewpoint discrimination in violation of the First Amendment. Now, it's kind of interesting because the president wasn't sued. The press office was sued. And the question is, can a court require a president to have someone at a press conference that he doesn't want? Or is that interfering in the executive branch decision-making? Much less than a president can force the court to have somebody in court that they don't want. That wasn't decided. It was decided more narrowly that the press office can't do it. Had the president written the order, it might have been different. So, however, the order doesn't require the government to grant the AP permanent access to the Oval Office, the East Room, or any other media event, nor does it bestow special treatment upon the AP. They get what they get, no more and no less than what anybody else gets. And the president is not a party. And the defense has not argued that an injunction would affect his constitutional authority in any way. So, so the judge deemed the Oval Office a non-public forum to which a journalist can claim a First Amendment right of access. Now, he couldn't come into the president's house, couldn't come onto Air Force One, couldn't go to Mar-a-Lago, but he can go to the Oval Office because it's a non-public forum to which a journalist can claim a First Amendment right of access. According to James Toronto, a Washington lawyer, editorial features writer, he believes it's unconstitutional. It violates the separation of powers because the president's control over his physical office is intrinsic to the authority of his political office. It would seem that way. If he can't control his office, what kind of an executive is he? And then the same argument would apply to Air Force One and Mar-a-Lago, wouldn't it? The president allows reporters occasionally to come to Air Force One and Mar-a-Lago, now, or even the golf course. Now, if he does, that means he has to let them all come. I think this may get reversed. I do. A lot of people don't think it will. And Judge Napolitano on Newsmax considered the opinion written by Judge McFadden a brilliant legal decision. I would have to take issue with my friend, Judge Napolitano. I thought it was trite, surface, and displayed very little understanding of separation of powers. But that's just me. U.S. buyers have been canceling Chinese orders at massive rates. We're going to run into trouble when we go through the transition of things that we normally get from China. Now, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been making a transition. And let's hope, we're going to get to test how good a transition we've made. Pharmaceuticals, for example, things like that we get from China. The less expensive common items that we get from China, I'm not worried about. It's the more sophisticated items. China is no longer just the dime store supplier. It is still that, but it also can provide a lot of sophisticated goods, and those are not going to get replaced like that. So there's going to have to be a transition there, and it's going to have to be managed really, really well. Well, I do not understand Andrew Cuomo running for mayor when he's responsible for the crime in New York City. There's another cop killer getting out that particularly offends me, and that's the guy who killed Eddie Byrne, who was killed in 1989 and was the brother of one of my assistant U.S. attorneys, and whose father was a friend of mine. And he was not killed; he was assassinated in the back of his head, shot in the back of his head. And this piece of crap McClary is getting out. This was explained to us even by Andrew's father, Mario, with whom you should never confuse Andrew, as life imprisonment is worse than the death penalty. My argument about that was twofold. One, they all get out. How about 44 now? So they're giving you bullshit when they tell you that. Typical liberal, don't care about the truth, just lie to you to help criminals. The second part of it that's equally as disturbing is that they are, when they get out, they end up almost as if they're celebrities. They go to these organizations like Black Lives Matter that dedicate themselves to killing cops. Shouldn't there be some limitation on where they can work? And this guy, Cuomo, is leading for mayor. 44 cop killers walking the street, 43 walking the street, 44 over this weekend. He's going to start releasing cop killers who killed cops when I was mayor, and I'm going to go nuts. I knew a lot of those guys. I remember the first one as if it was yesterday. He was buried out of my old church, actually, St. Raphael's. Biden probably wouldn't even gone. These Democrats love people. Horseshit. They love politics, power, money, and they are pathological narcissists, like the new leader of Germany, whose government is falling apart already. So he won an election, a split election, where his party, the sort of right-wing party, but the right-wing party with rhinos, had 29% of the vote. The really right-wing sort of MAGA party had 21% of the vote. And the Liberal Party, Socialist Party, Communist Party had 16% of the vote. So now who should be governing? What did the people of Germany tell Friedrich Merz about what they wanted? They wanted a conservative government. They're not getting one. He has completely eliminated the AfD because he says they're neo-Nazi without offering any proof except a few people who were tangentially related to the party years ago who were neo-Nazis. Well, geez, the one he's agreeing with has communists that are not tangentially connected and are operating for China. Mr. Merz has done a really good job since he took over. See how Trump has become much more popular since he took over? Right now, if the election were held, the AFG would defeat him by 2 points. He defeated them by 8. They've made a switch of 10 points. The German people don't want Merz, and they got him for 4 years or 5 years. There's going to be another Angela Merkel. Germany used to be a really good country. It's now one of the weaker European countries. How the president went ahead and made this decision is going to be the source of, I think, a lot of debate in his biographies. And, the reason is there's probably several sources to it. Probably not one. Maybe something he was considering from the beginning. Remember, right from the beginning, he talked about accepting 0 tariffs. And then he had some other people saying we would not compromise on the tariffs. Now, I read them as if they were consistent. which is he was saying, we'll take 0-0. And they were saying we won't compromise, which is we're not going to take 10-0. We're not going to take 0-0. And then you put taxes on us and all the indirect things to make up for, which is why he tossed the EU out. So I don't know if there was an inconsistency there or a failure to probe it correctly. I'll find out. But I think I'm right. I think that was a deliberate playing two sides. So you left yourself room to go either way. There was never a point where I thought if he could get a true 0-0, he would ever turn it down, because that's what he's always wanted. His view of free trade is free trade, fair trade, same terms. And you can't do better than that. So the idea that these people came along so fast isn't so unusual. He's been saying that for a long, long time. Now, his change of mind, his quick change of mind, came about to some extent because, as he said, some of the people were getting yippy. By that he means nervous. The market people were getting very, very nervous. He has great respect for Jamie Dimon, and Jamie Dimon, although he believes very much in the tariffs and that the tariffs are necessary, did say he thought if we went too severely in this direction, we could have a recession. So there's a guy that supports what he's doing, but telling him, not in a hostile way, but in a helpful way, that this could be a recession. I know he respects Jamie Dimon. And then, of course, he had the same thing from his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who he and Scott Bessent were taking a good look at the bond market, and the bond market was getting killed. And as Charlie Gasparino points out, the bond market is much more important to the government than the stock market, because it'll have an impact on interest rates. It can just screw up our entire budget. And I think when it went over the top, he said, I got to do something about this. But you know something? I can make lemonade out of lemon, because I can put China in a corner. Now, that happened because a separate influx of information was coming to him, which is Vietnam wanted a deal, UK wanted a deal, EU wanted a deal, Mexico and Canada were negotiating for a deal. Japan sent over its number 2 guy right away. Bibi, the first thing he said is, I want a deal. By the time they were finished, their phones were running off the hook. It was much more instantly popular than they thought, and decided, hey, let's jump on this. We can have most of the nations of the world here, and we can have China out here like the ogre. And they sure are the ogre. Who's going to buy from them? Unless you really have to. And then you buy from them until you find an alternative. So it's very interesting. I think it is a great lesson in how Trump decides. The court decisions that happened this week, we talked about. The AP decision, I think, will get reversed. The decisions involving the Venezuelans, some of whom are now in Venezuela already, and some of whom are in Louisiana, and I think someplace else. Well, some are in El Salvador, some are in Venezuela, some are in El Salvador, some are in Louisiana, and some are in another place in America, in Texas somewhere. The ones out of the jurisdiction of the country, we have no control over at all. The ones out of the jurisdiction of the district judges who were acting like dictators and fascists and trying to act like president, the Supreme Court has decided it's out of their control. There's no standing. They don't have any control. They have no jurisdiction. The president can send them back anytime they want. And the only thing is he has to give them notice. And if they want, they can file a habeas petition, which everybody can do. And so far, nobody has. And I think they're headed back. So that should break that logjam pretty effectively, pretty darn effectively, and make Boasberg look like the left-wing traitor who hates the American people that he really is, and the J6 creep that he is. How did Kash Patel put a possible J6 creep in a key position in the FBI? I wish I could just get a quick answer to that. I don't believe it. I have great confidence in Kash.
Hopefully it's just so he has to fire everyone and then gets fired or something.
Yeah, I can't, usually I can come up with a theory. I'm having a hard time coming up with a theory for this. Did you see this guy in New York? We showed him yesterday. He had his NYPD thing on. The guy who went for criminally insane medical evaluations 30 times. And I can't even count the number of women whose jaws he broke, eyes he's knocked out, faces that he's ruined. And those are the ones he got caught for. And they keep letting him out because of the Cuomo bail laws. Cuomo bail laws have about 7,000 to 9,000 criminals going after in New York. That wouldn't be the case had Cuomo not passed a law. Cuomo bail laws have 44 cop killers walking the streets that would not be walking the streets. And there are 15,000 old people, maybe half of whom would have died. So I find this very, very troubling. The other day, you may remember, I singled out a reporter from the Wall Street Journal named Ling Ling Wei, W-E-I. And Ling Ling Wei had written a very, very insightful article about how China is having a very difficult time keeping up with the Trump administration because they're not flexible. They don't know how to react to him. And for him, you've got to react quickly. And even on this situation, delay is going to hurt them terrifically because the rest of the world is going to look at them as incompetent. Now, all of a sudden, he writes another article in which he puts in it the following.
And Ling Ling, that's a man or a woman?
I don't know.
Okay.
And in this article, he says, Beijing's calculus is how to inflict hardships on companies that bank on their ties with the world's second largest economy. And at that, they're going to exceed the United States. I don't get it. I don't get how it almost looks to me, because I'm so damn suspicious, somebody got to Ling Ling because there's so much internal influence from China and told them, you better straighten out your position, Ling Ling, or you're going to get slapped around. According to him, China has systemically put together a new arsenal of tools that's intended to minimize the cost to China and maximize the pain to the U.S. They're prepared in a way that gives them an asymmetric advantage in the trade war. He doesn't go on to explain the asymmetric advantage after having told us that they're too slow to adapt to have any prayer 2 days earlier. And there's no doubt that Rupert Murdoch sucks China's ass. So we're going to watch this guy carefully. look, China's infiltrated everything. They've infiltrated everything. There's no there's no doubt about that. We tried to get Charlie Gasparino on because he did a good job of explaining how the market, the bond market, did a lot to help us. Although I do think it was only one. I don't know how Trump backtracked. He was always willing to do 0%. But this is done when you don't like somebody. Trump backtracks. That's a propaganda headline. You could say Trump gets what he's always wanted and puts China in the penalty box.
Love the hockey analogy there.
What?
Love the hockey analogy.
You like that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the American exports make up 11% of our GDP. Chinese exports make up 20%. Who's going to get hurt more? Who depends on it more? It takes a lot of communist bullshit to work your way around that, right? A lot. But boy, they can do it. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen with the bill that now is at the point where if the Republicans can only stick together, both in the House and the Senate, it's going to pass. And we're going to get a tax deduction. We're going to maintain our tax status, which will be great for our economy because it's in a strange way, it's like getting it because we weren't expecting it. How do you think that changes midterms?
Well, I think we're not done with this bill, obviously, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of backroom dealing as it goes back to the committees to find some cuts. And hopefully it'll really strengthen our base. Hopefully the cuts don't hit too hard the middle of the country and the states that we need them.
Well,
I think a lot of people are going to be excited about the cuts, and it's going to energize their people. What do you think, Ted?
I think it depends how it's messaged. You see the Democrats already. I mean, they've gone all in on Musk and Doge, and what they're going to do is try and use this as evidence that, falsely they're going to accuse Trump of going after Medicaid and Medicare. Not just Trump, really the members of Congress that are up for re-election.
But let's be clear, Trump's directive is to not touch those programs.
Right.
And I actually don't think that they will, but that doesn't stop, Democrats from saying, oh, they're trying to take it. Right. Look at all the cuts they're trying to make.
Right. So,
and I think we'll probably have a significant economic benefit from these.
Doesn't it all depend on where the economy is?
There you go. That's
yes,
right,
and that's the thing. They'll try to make the tax cuts seem like they're bad.
Both sides can make all kinds of crazy arguments.
Yes,
the Democrats made them last time, and the Republicans won because the statistics were on our side.
Right.
So it's really going to depend on inflation, unemployment, GDP, jobs.
Right.
If we look like a booming economy,
right,
we got morning in America.
Bingo.
If we don't, we got a problem.
Yeah, we have a lot at stake in 26.
Let them down.
A lot at stake in 26.
And let's remember, even though maybe for you and me, was a much bigger election than just the economy. It was our future democracy. For many Americans, the election was all the economy.
Oh, yeah.
And if we win on the economy, we win. And if we don't win on the economy, we lose. I do think then if we win on the economy, all the rest of them become accessible. Then the social issues become important. The whole idea of women being trashed, the education, all the things we're winning on,
Right.
or how we're winning on containing immigration.
Right.
I think then they can accept all that.
Right. I think that's,
And then we can win big.
that's a
Well,
very
the
good point.
people, in terms of immigration, the people polling shows us that they support Trump's immigration policies. That's like, I think that's his strongest metric as they have measured is Trump's handling of immigrants, illegal immigrants in the border. So I think we're winning on that issue, and we can keep pounding that because there have been successes and they continue. So when you pair that with the economy, I think 26 could be good for us, uncharacteristically of history, right? You know, typically you lose, seats.
And he's a masterful politician, and he does have control of a lot of the levers, which he didn't have last time. I mean, there are a lot of look what he did with the market. When you're out of office, he can't do what he did with the market, right?
Right.
I mean, he just turned it around like boop, boop, boop,
Exactly.
bam.
That's a very good point.
So I think this bodes well for giving us a long runway, which we're going to need if we have to change America. In 4 years, he's going to get more done than any American president can get done, but it won't be enough.
He's using America's strengths. We're a strong country, and he's finally using our position in the world to our benefit.
But 4 years of that can be erased. 8 years of it becomes really hard to erase, particularly if it goes over into another administration and they do the same thing.
Yes.
And build on it.
Yes. Well, that movement, I mean, that's what we're building. So, and that's what our viewers are tuned in to do. We're building the movement to keep that party going.
And that's why you got to stick with us, because we're right at the core of it. And we'll keep you posted. We'll give you all the information you don't get elsewhere. You also have these guys who are fun.
There
they are.
We got our red, white,
There
and blue
they are.
again. We're matching. Just
That's our little crew.
Different.
Show us again. This is our workstation.
This is us, and you can look over here and talk to us.
Notice the American flags around? Think Democrats would have that many American flags? Hey, Ted, remember when we looked out of the window of WABC when Biden was coming, and we looked, and then we had to go downstairs just to check it out?
Have that, yeah.
We looked for 8 blocks for the Democratic crowd. They didn't have a single American flag to greet the president. I have never seen a president not greeted with an American flag, which said to me the Democratic Party belongs to another country.
That's
right.
so funny you say that too, because Trump was in Michigan a whole lot during the campaign, but when he would come, there were trucks. There were trucks with American flags,
course.
and they're like, "Would you like to wave one
That
of
was
these?"
true of Reagan. Hey, it was true of Clinton.
Right.
It was because he's an American president. I mean, they all knew he wasn't an American president. And then the one that got me the most, and we're going to play it again, is the San Francisco reception for the biggest murder of Chinese alive. And all the Chinese are going, you killed my father. Isn't that nice?
Oh, well, at least they cleaned the place up a little bit.
Yeah, that changed the next day. Well, we'll be back with you tomorrow to wrap up the week and get you ready for the weekend. We'll be on Lindell's TV at 7, and we'll be on at 8 on that venerable, great show that's becoming a staple now, America's Mayor Live. God bless America. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776. one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze,